everyone, welcome back to RachandBella Crafts. I hope you're all well. So we are now finally at the last video of our collaboration. I hope you've been following along with the hashtag JJ Tips, Tricks and Hacks. We have now seen all of these amazing artists who have been through lots and lots of different tips and tricks and hacks and different ways in which you can do things to make your junk journaling easier. So who have we seen this week? Well, we had Rose on Monday, and she went through a whole video showing us how to make faux postage stamps. She had some amazing tips on there, to the point I even went and got all my stuff out and started doing some of my own. It was really inspiring, so thank you for that, Rose. On Tuesday then we had Diane with the heat and folder embossing tips. Again, that was brilliant. She really made you think about the different ways in which you could use your embossing and the different ways in which you could use embossed papers and other mediums, which was brilliant. And she also showed us how to use the heat embossing as well, which is always good to get some tips on. We had Mandy then on Wednesday. She did the mass making altered paper clips with us. I think she gave us 6 or 7 different ways to do altered paper clips. They were brilliant. I really enjoyed that as well. On Thursday, we had Tanya from Tatty Treasures, and she showed us different ways in which we could use our master boards and the different ephemera that you could make with them and how you could further then decorate them. On Friday, we had a brilliant video from Joy Defee, and she showed you how to do collaging and the different ways that she does it. So she gave us lots of different tips for collaging. She also made a really handy little envelope pocket holder thing, and she gave us some really good tips about how to store our scraps, which made me then sit and sort my scraps out. So thank you for that, Joey. That was really interesting. I hadn't thought previously about putting them into, organising them into types and stuff and size. And I like to organise them into size, but I hadn't kept them in, like the colours and things, themes kind of thing. So I just kind of made it easy then if you wanted to put things together. And then yesterday, Shonna brought us a brilliant mass make on journal index cards, and that was fantastic because she did that with different mixed medias. I loved the way she put the book pages on and tore it off, because I was looking at the image of her thumbnail thinking, how did she get that book print inside of the index card like that? But it was brilliant. So if you haven't yet watched them, go and check out their videos, please, guys, because they've been amazing. We have had some fantastic tips. In fact, everybody has been absolutely amazing. When I first threw this challenge out to everybody and asked them if they wanted to join in the collaboration, and I said, I didn't give them any ideas. I just said, look, come back to me with a tip, a trick or a hack, and this is the date your video's on. And they all came back with something different, and it was just brilliant. It was great to be able to have, all these videos with something different in. So you guys have had loads of ideas thrown at you this month. So I hope that you'll be able to utilise them. The playlist will stay on our YouTube channel. Come back as often as you need them. If you're ever looking for tips and tricks, if you haven't yet finished watching all the videos, they'll be there. They're not going anywhere. So, continue to enjoy them and continue to support the girls, if you wouldn't mind. Today is also the last day of the birthday sale. We've had 40% off our digital kits on our Etsy channel all month. Thank you to those of you that have purchased items, that have bought a journal, that have bought fabrics from us. We really appreciated your support. And just to say, obviously, this will be going off now tonight at Greenwich Mean Time, midnight. It'll switch off on Etsy, so that'll be the sale over. Also, we've still got the giveaways to draw. Now, I'm not doing those today because obviously we haven't had a chance to finish doing all of your comments. So how do you enter the giveaway? There are a few more prizes that are more listed here. I just didn't want to type it up again and use the paper again. But we'll be drawing that in the middle of the week. I'll be putting an extra video out for that, and I will make sure it's got the hashtag so you can find it. How do you enter? You need to have watched every video. You need to leave a like on every video, each one of these videos. You need to leave a comment on each video and subscribe as well to the channel. And that's all you got to do. It's not hard. You just need to enter 25 different videos. So, there are lots and lots of opportunities to win. There are some amazing prizes. In fact, all of the prizes are amazing. So, yeah, don't miss out on that opportunity. Okay, so today is day 25, and I am day 25. You have me for the last video. And for my video today, I am going to talk to you all about buttons. How could you not guess? They're everywhere. Well, they are on my desk today. Yeah, I was kind of like, looking for an idea that hadn't already been covered. and I was thinking to myself, you know, we need to look at they're underutilized sometimes, and we don't talk about them enough. There are so many different things that you can do with buttons, and I just wanted to go through some of those things with you today and just show you some different things that you can do with them, and also the different types of buttons that we have. So the first thing I was going to show you was my button storage. Now, this is not my button storage. Please don't have a heart attack. I don't store my buttons this messily. This box here is the first button box I had, and these are the first batch of buttons that I had. Now, I'm all for organisation, but sometimes I just like them kept in there. I don't know why. They're just my first lot. These are the ones I started crafting with. I don't even know where I got them from. I think I do. I remember having them in a big jar. I've never bought any buttons. I'm just, oh, I'm lying. I have. I've bought buttons once. I'm going to show you those in a minute. But all the other buttons that you'll see on my desk today are old buttons. And I will tell you how I go about procuring my buttons. But no, this is my first buttons pot. So I used to keep them all in here, and it's double-sided, so you've got a flap underneath as well with storage the same on the other side. At some points they were organised all in colours, and obviously from where I've travelled about with it, I tend to take this case around with me, and they've just gotten mixed up, muddled. But that is not on the whole how I tend to keep my buttons. Now, my buttons are stored in a large box that consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 15, I think, of these. Oh no, 18, I can see on the side now. 18 of these pots. Oh, look at that there. See, these things, they creep in everywhere, don't they? Out of them. See, oh, and another one. Look, they're not even buttons. How rude. So I have them all normally stored in colour coordinated pots. So you see I've got my purple buttons. I've got my greeny kind of buttons. What else have we got here? Let's have a quick look through here. I've got my blue buttons. I've got my wooden finished leatherette buttons. Sorry, not wooden, the leather. I've got my ugly buttons. And then I've got specials, which are kind of like all the metal finish and anything with like an interesting finish to it. So that's, well, my son helped me sort these out. I literally, I bought buttons last year during lockdown, because obviously we couldn't, oh, this must be 2 years ago now, because of course we couldn't buy anything, could we? The year I got into junk journaling, we went into lockdown like 2 months later, and I was like freaking out because I couldn't get out and get anything. So the internet became my friend, and I used to find things on places like Marketplace, eBay, Instagram, and these are some of my neutrals there as well. And what I found was that people were selling stuff on Marketplace on Facebook, because of course everybody was having a good sorter because they're at home, and I was able to buy like boxes full of buttons, you know, old buttons, you know, they were a mess a lot, and they all needed like sorting and washing, but buttons all the same. And, you know, to have bought all of those new, that would have cost me a lot of money. I mean, I got a huge amount of buttons in there. And, you know, what I love about buying old buttons is that you get a real mix then, whereas if you buy them new, you tend to only get them in one colour or one pattern or what have you. So at least by buying somebody else's old collection, I was able then to have lots of different types and styles. So here on my lovely Tim Holtz mat, you'll see a selection of the different types of buttons that obviously you can get. All of these are usable in our junk journaling. So you've got this type here, the large ones, you've got 2-hole buttons, you've got small metal buttons, you've got buttons that are mounted on the back. I can't think what they're called, but yeah. Now, I can remember once Mum sorting all of hers out and put them on one side, and I was like, why have you put all those buttons on one side? And she was like, because I can't put them in my journals because they're too bulky. And I said, hang on, I've got an idea what we can do with those. So keep hold of those. I'll come back to them in a minute. Yes, they are a bit bulky to go on the interior of a journal, but there is still a use for them. Then you've got other buttons like this that have nothing on the surface. You've got buttons like this. Now, just because they're buttons and they have holes in the centre of them doesn't mean you have to stitch them on. Now, if you like to sew, that's great, but for some people are not big fans of sewing, or just, you know, don't get on with it very well. It can be fiddly when you're trying to attach buttons to things. So again, that's down to personal preference, but there are different ways in which you can do things. Now I have a small collection of, these are very old buttons that I collected. Again, the year before last, when I was, you know, collecting up bits and pieces, I also collected some vintage sewing items, and these are some of my vintage buttons. Now in this tin here, I keep some very, very special buttons. So I will buckle there. Under here, and I bought these from a lady that I bought a lot of antique lace from back last year, and these are very, 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 very old. That's the only thing I can say, because I know that they were her mother's, and her mother was a seamstress, and she actually was French, or her father was French, and they used to go and buy things in France a lot when her mother was first starting out. And these buttons are super old. These are like early last century age, and I don't think I'll ever use them because they're just so lovely. So I keep them in this tin because they're really pretty. Perhaps one day when I have a very special project, I might add them to that, but for the time being, they stay in my tin. I know we try not to hoard, aren't we? But that's just my little tin of specials, so they stay in there. So that's my old buttons. So when we talk about storing buttons, obviously there are different things that you can utilise to store your buttons in. So for example, I did have a set of these brilliant magnetic pots that I used to have a magnet board on the back of a desk a while ago. So I bought these and put them all on there, and they're great because you can obviously stick them on the back of the magnet thing and you can see what's inside of your tub. Sadly, don't have that desk any longer, so they tend to just bounce about the room a bit, but yeah, so that's one idea of what you can do, way to store your buttons. Another way in which you can store your buttons, of course, is in little jars. So I do have certain jars with which I keep specific buttons. So this teeny tiny little jar here houses lots of my teeny tiny little buttons, and I just think they're quite cute. I like to keep that in my sewing cabinet, and then it just looks good. And this one here, obviously, has got all of the nice mother of pearl style buttons that we all love to use. So that's another idea. This one here, now these are the buttons that I bought. This is what caught my eye when I said, I've never bought new buttons. Now I bought these new. These are from Amazon. I bought these quite a while ago. But these are wooden ones, and they've got a nice kind of modern-y painted effect on them. But again, they're kept in another jar. They did actually come in a plastic pot, which I will show you now, which I have kept, but I don't use that to keep my buttons in any longer, just because I prefer the jars. But obviously that is another option for you to use something like that. As I said, the majority of my buttons are bulked away in a big holder that holds all of these plastic pots here. Another thing that you can do to store your buttons is use little tins. Now I've got quite a few of these little tins. Again, these sit in my sewing cabinet, and they've got all sorts of things in it. These are not very tidy. Oh, this one's got all my flower bits in. But in there you can see are some buttons. These are wooden buttons, which I think I had from Mum. These are probably one of the first ones that I had, actually. And I just keep them in there because they go with the colours that are inside the box with the flowers. Here is another tin. Now this tin I used when I went on holiday, and I was making up dangles and things. So I had a selection of everything in there. That's why there's all sorts of different bits and pieces in there. And I've just kept that in there for the time being to utilise, so that you see I've got some buttons in there, but you could just use that to keep specific types of buttons in. And then of course you've got the wooden boxes. Now this one is one of my specials. So these are all my oddity buttons, metals, you know, all the kind of blingy bits, anything that, you know, if you want to put something like really unusual on, they sit in here. So again, the benefit of buying somebody else's old button collection is you do get a good selection then of oddities in there and things like this. So you know, that's not the sort of thing I would normally go out and buy, but I'm sure I will find a use for it. Yeah, so that's another idea about how to store your buttons. So what do we do with all of these buttons? What can we do with all of these buttons? I'm going to show you some examples of what I've got here now. Okay, so the first thing that you can think about using your buttons for is for different types of ephemera. Now I like to use button cards. These are just some button cards I've made up from a free image on Google. I've actually done a free download for you, which will be in the link below for you to download a card of these. There's 8 of them on there, so you can cut them out if you want to sew your buttons to them just to get them all organised. But yeah, that's one quite nice thing that you can do. You can pop that into a journal then with some buttons on, and then obviously whoever's going to have the journal will also have a nice collection of buttons to go with it. So that's one thing that you can do with them, is you can put them onto button cards. Now, another way in which we can use our buttons is by adding them to our fabric clusters. So this is an example of one that Bella made some time ago. And you can see actually she's used bits of felt underneath this one just to kind of utilise the fabric, rolled up her lace underneath, and then made a flower by adding a button to the top. You can also use them in different ways, your scrap clusters. And on this one here, for example, I've actually doubled up the buttons just to add a little bit of interest. So that's something that you can always, you know, utilise. If you find that some of your buttons are a little bit boring, you can jazz them up again by mixing the colours and placing one on top of the other. Here is an example of where I would use a button cluster. So as you can see here, that's been stitched on to, actually it's been stuck on, I apologise, to some fabric, and then obviously added to a piece of ephemera, and I think it really sets it off. Just finishes things off nicely, doesn't it? So that's one example there of what you can do. Here is an example in an old journal of mine how you can use your fabric clusters with your buttons, and I just think that when colour coordinated with your page, they can really set off whatever it is that you're trying to do, and they just finish things off nicely. So it's a nice bit of an embellishment there then to finish a page off. You can also just add them directly to other aspects of your pages. So there's an example there of where they've been used to decorate a page. I know I do have another example in here. Bear with while I flick it across the pages. There we go. So again, I mean, these are quite simple examples. This is one of my first journals, and I think I used to use buttons quite a lot actually initially, and used to use them a lot to decorate journal pages, and there's another example there of where I've just added one there just for give a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for, brings a bit of texture to the page, doesn't it? Makes things pop. So yeah, clusters, fabric clusters, great way in which we can utilise them in our journals. This is another example of how you can use your buttons to go inside of a journal, is by sewing them to some quilts. Now, especially if you want to include buttons with a journal, if you're selling it or giving it away and you obviously don't want them to get lost, just by simply stitching them to some quilting, adding them into the journal, it just adds a real element of, I don't know, just gives it all a bit more dimension. Something that I've done previously in the past as well is to stitch around the quilting, add an eyelet, and then put a little bulb pin on there, and then you could hang that then on the side of your journal as something of a bit of interest, or onto the front, just like a bit of a dangle. But yeah, lots of things that you can do with quilt and buttons as well. So here's another example of how you can use your buttons with fabric. So here I've got a fabric ruffle, and on each of the pleats I've added a button. So obviously you could use that as the end of your page. You could use that hanging on the top of a page to add a direction. It's not direction, it's adding decoration. You could even put it across the bottom of a page like a skirt, and it would just add a little bit more interest to the page. Equally, you could do the same thing with some scraps of lace. So here I have some lace scrap that I had left over from a project I did recently, and I've simply stitched some buttons on there. I've left this long enough at the top so that it can be attached to the top of the page, and then it will hang almost like a bookmark really over the page. So again, utilising scraps of lace with your buttons is another idea that you can use your buttons for. And this is just another example of some scrap materials where I've just stitched up the side. This is literally one strip of scrap materials. It's just the edge of something. And just by stitching some lovely buttons to it, it just gives it a new lease of life. It makes it something very interesting and something I would like to definitely put on the page in one of my journals. So again, any scrap fabric you've got, add a button to it and it just brings it to life, I think. Okay, so here are two examples of dangles that I have quickly put together with some buttons. Buttons of interest. Now, we were talking earlier on about the buttons that have got the fixture on the back that are a little bit bulky for journals, but these would make perfect dangles on the ends of your journals, because they do actually, you know, they are fitted in an interesting way, but by standing out, it actually makes it a little bit more interesting on the dangle in the way that they sit. So obviously my recommendation would be that you stitch it into place. So what I've done is I've knotted between each one so they don't move, and then they will simply just turn around then on the side of the journal. But I just think that's something that really adds a bit of dimension to the outside, makes it look really interesting. If you can colour coordinate them and you've got different styles, all the better really. And then I've just added a pearl bead at the bottom, again just to add a little bit more interest, but I think they look quite cool. This is another example of one that you could do as a dangle. So again, I've interspersed these with pearl beads, and then I've added that just to the end of a safety pin, add a little bit of lace to the safety pin. I've got a button on the bottom of my lace, and it kind of gives it a bit of a flag appearance. But yeah, you could use I wouldn't ordinarily use brown thread to do this. Obviously, I'm already doing that, so it just makes it easier for you to see what I'm doing. But you know, if you've used all sorts of different colours and things, again, that could add lots of interest to your journal, front or even inside. I think that would make quite a nice page dangle as well, because it's fairly flat, so it's not going to take up too much room and cause much bulk. So yeah, dangles on your journals. Okay, so here we have some examples. This one I worked on recently with one of the actually one of the videos I think in this collaboration. We made these boat pockets. This is an older one that I've done, but just wanted to show you examples of how we can use buttons as closures. So with these boat pockets, what I did, I fitted a button to the bottom, didn't stitch it, literally just glued it on. In this case, I actually used a little bit of lace as well to give it a little bit more thing. But obviously there was a pocket under here that I wanted to be able to access, so I didn't want to stick down the front flap of the pocket. And simply by adding a button to the front, it then gave me a closure for my pocket flap. So that's one example there. And here's another example here. But again, such a simple thing, and simply by just putting a little bit of a lip there, they do make the ideal closure. And also on this one here, I've used it as a decoration on my closure for this little pocket as well. So yeah, definitely using buttons as closures. Okay, so here we have two examples of how they've been used in journals. Just to quickly show you, here's another example of them being used as dangles. So as we come across these in the various things I'm going to show you, I will show you the dangles. So that's quite cute on that one there. But this is a journal that was actually made for me by Mum. This is actually the first journal she made for me. And in here, you'll see they've been used as paper clips. So where she's altered her paper clip, she's added a button just to finish it off. So I'll just show you. This one here has got a little birdie cage dangle on it as well. But simply by adding the buttons, look, to the clusters on the altered paper clips, it just gives it a little bit more interest and again dimension. So that's another way in which you can use your buttons, is by adding them to your altered paper clips. So here we have three examples of journals. I haven't made any of these journals. These journals were all gifted to me. Some of them in swaps. One of them is a beautiful gift for Christmas. And this is an example of how you can use buttons on the front of your journals. Now, each one of these designs has all been done completely differently. So the first idea here is that you can add it on the front again for interest, but as a cluster. So this is a journal that was made for me by the lovely Mandy from Sunflowers and Doors, and she's attached it using a cluster mixed with quilt. some fabric and some paper. So, you know, that's another example there. And of course that's been glued on as well. So there's no added there's no necessity for you to sew it on. If you don't want to and don't feel comfortable sewing, that's not a problem. You can just glue it on and it looks absolutely amazing. It really sets off the front of the journal. Here is another example of how it can be used on the front of a journal. So this is a journal I had in a swap with Sheila. And here she has stitched the buttons onto some old vintage lace. And again, because it's a vintage style journal, it just really adds to the whole kind of old feel. You know, she's used old buttons. They don't match. They're not, you know, all brighten in your face, but it does give that lovely bit of texture to the front of the journal as well. So again, that's another idea, is that you can stitch them directly onto any fabric or paper that you've got onto the front of your journal. And the third way in which you can do it, or the third example I have to show you today, is obviously the only ways in which you can do it, but this is another example of a journal. I had this one in a swap with Joan, and what she's done here, very cleverly, is she's created a pocket on the front of this journal, and inside the pocket she has added a journal card. Now on the journal card she has added then a beautiful dangle and a cluster with buttons stitched on as well. And simply by popping that in the pocket on the front, it immediately adds to the interest of the journal. So let's just pop that back in there and pull this lovely beautiful dangle out of the way. Here we go. But I can see, so it's not that you have to add things directly on. Sometimes it can just be the way in which it's incorporated, but that instantly changes the outlook of the front of the journal. Very clever way actually in which she's added that on the front of there. So yeah, that's 3 examples of how you can add buttons to the fronts of your journals. Now here I have 2 examples of how you can utilize buttons on the spine. So if you are binding your journal in the traditional way with, golly, what do we call this? I don't know, binding thread, I'm going to call it. I can't think what it's called. But if you're going to be using a traditional kind of binding method, so you're bringing your string on the outside of the journal, it can be quite nice, if you remember to do it at the time, to thread some buttons through as you're binding the pages in. So here on this one, what I've done is I've threaded them through, and of course this is where I was saying about using these odd shaped ones that tend to stick out, because that's ideal then for you to pop them on to the side of here, because it's not causing any obstruction to the journal, and it does actually really add a nice little bit of well, what's the word I'm looking for? Again, dimension, I think, to that. So, and the fact that they're all odd, I think just adds to it, because obviously I've got different fabrics and effects on here. And yeah, I think they just go really nicely. Here's another example. This is a journal that Bella made for me for the Christmas swap. So let me just zoom you out a little bit. There we go. And she's actually used elastics on this one here. And using the elastics, she's then threaded buttons on, but in a really intriguing and interesting way. So again, that's just a really good way in which you can use the buttons to add some more interest and just to kind of add a different aspect, because with this I felt it really brought a kind of new pattern into it as well. So yeah, use them in your binding. I tell you, somebody who is excellent at doing this as well, if you go and look at more examples, is Natalie from Line Arrow. She makes the most amazing covers for her journals, and very often she utilises buttons to do that as well. So yeah, have a little look at some of her examples as well, and then you'll be able to see different ways in which they're bound. And of course there's another way in which you can put them on the front of the journal there. So yeah, add them to your binding. Okay, so another way in which we can utilise our buttons is to add them to our ephemera. Obviously, depending on what the ephemera is, there's also different ways in which you can do that, but they really do help to embellish. So here is an example of a fabric pocket that Bella has made here in this signature. And you can see here she's added to the front this little tiny owl button. Hope you can see him. There he is. And she's finished him off with a little bow, which has gone through the centre of his little belly there. But doesn't that look cute there on the front of that pocket? And it really just adds something to it. Another great example of how you can use buttons is in your snippet rolls. Now, this is a snippet roll that's been made. And obviously the buttons have been used then to embellish it. And then of course it's been added to the journal as a belly band. So what a perfect use for the snippet roll, but what a great way to utilise your buttons. And I just think that adds lots of dimension there, lots of interest. And it doesn't matter about them not all being the same, you know, they go with the pattern because the pattern is all different anyway. So if you're using scraps, anything goes really, doesn't it? But that's just a great example there of different types of buttons with different types of fabrics and how that's now been utilised as a piece of ephemera in the journal. Okay, so this is another example of how we can use our buttons. Not necessarily in a paper journal, but if you have any slow stitch projects, which obviously we do include in our journals, if you're using samplers in your journals, or if you're using, like I said, clusters and things like that. But this is actually a slow stitch journal that Mum's made for me. And I'm going to show you how she has utilised the buttons to embellish the stitching and obviously accentuate the things that she's doing. But they do just sometimes draw your eye. So if there's something in particular that you wanted to draw attention to, they're very good at drawing your eye to them. So on the cover here, you can see an example here where she's used them as part of a scrappy cluster. If we go inside, you'll see then that she's utilised it here as part of a cluster, but not only that, but she's also used two. So as I showed you that example earlier on where they were one on top of the other, and she's also used a really cool stitch then just to kind of set the button off. So that's become a bit of a feature then, hasn't it, on the actual page. These are all things which you can do and add into your paper journals, because you know you can do that on a cluster and then add that on. Here's another example here. So if you had a sample or a scrappy sample, you could then add the buttons to that and pop that into your journal. Here she's done something with a piece of lace. So she's used an embellishment of lace and then added the button to that. Again, it just makes it stand out and makes it pop off the page, I feel. We didn't have a button on that page, the only page with the buttons. Now, yo-yos are another great example of what you can do to use your buttons. So making a yo-yo and then adding the button as the centerpiece, you can then add that. I've done that many times, pop them into a journal as just, you know, a thing of interest on the page. And again, here's another example of them in a tag. So you can use them to decorate your tags. Another example here. So again, you could use them there as, if that was inside your journal page, add them to a piece of lace there. And again, this is almost like a little lace cluster in the corner here, but she's used that by utilising a tab as well. So again, you could incorporate that idea into your journals. And there's another couple here then at the back. So again, we've got these lovely little lace clusters, and they're just finished off and attached with a button. So it actually leaves the lace loose. And then again here as part of another beautiful lace and crochet cluster. So that's more ideas there of how you can utilise buttons in your journals or in your slow stitch projects with scraps of lace and material, to use them as, to add dimension, to use them as central pieces to draw your eye to something as well. So some more ideas there. And then the last example I have of how I use my buttons, this box here, we're talking about storage and being tidy all the time. Well, this box here is one of the first things that I covered some fabric with. I got a thing about collecting little boxes, and this one I thought I was going to keep all my, I kept all my my chunk journal stuff inside of it, and the first thing I did after adding bits of trim and adding a pocket was to add these little buttons just to finish off the decoration, and I think they look great, and they've been on there now for a couple of years. So again, they were just glued. Well, I actually used sticky pads initially, but because I've had it near the radiator, they did start to dry out, so I've added some glue onto some of those now. But I just think, you know, for a really simple decorative idea, when you just, you know, want to cover something over, or if you've got a little box or something, just to add them, and they make a really lovely decoration. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial today, or, well, less of a tutorial, more of a kind of, this is what you can do, tips for buttons. Don't forget that there will be a link below for you if you want to download the sheet of button cards that I've done. Again, it's a nice simple card thing, but you can decorate them, do all sorts of things with them. But that's there if you should want to use that to organise your buttons. Also, don't forget, if you haven't yet seen all of the videos, if you have just come back here because you're one of my subbies and you haven't seen the collaboration videos, don't miss out. Go back, check out these videos today. They are all in the playlist, which is also linked below, and the giveaway, you've got until the middle of the week to do that. I'm going to cut it off Tuesday night, the giveaway, so after Tuesday night you won't have a chance to go back and put your comments and likes and subscribes on, so try and get that done today if you can. What else did I have to tell you? I think that's it. Don't forget about the sale. We've got our 40% off our DigiKits. That's running until midnight tonight, Greenwich Mean Time. Are we on Greenwich Mean Time? I think we are. Yes. So if you want to go and grab yourself some kits with a great discount, go do that now. And just before I go, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you all for the support that you've given us all for the collaboration. I know that each and every one of the artists in the collaboration has very much appreciated your comments, the likes, the support, the girls that have gained new subscribers. I know you've helped 2 of them reach their 1,000 subscribers mark, which has been amazing. That's such a huge milestone for anyone that's trying to start a YouTube channel. So again, we thank you for that. Really appreciate you taking your time to just follow along and support the collaboration. And just a quick announcement, we will be back in April with our next collaboration. I am not going to tell you too much because I don't want to spoil the surprise, but keep an eye out because in the middle of March, I will be doing a video to tell you more about it, to tell you who is in the next collaboration with us. We have secured some more exciting names. I know you keep thinking, could there be any more? Could there be? Yes, there are more. And we have got some amazing artists joining us for the next collaboration. Trust me, you will not want to miss it. Every single one of the collaborations that we've put together already, be it on Instagram, be it on YouTube, has been flooded with so much talent. And we haven't worn that out yet. So don't forget, make sure you come back and check us out in the middle of the month, and we will have information about the kit, because there will be a kit to go with the next collaboration, and there'll be a discount code, so if you do want to get it early, you'll be able to get it as a discount. And I will also give you a heads up on who is taking part and what our theme is going to be, so it's all incredibly exciting. But for the meantime, enjoy March. I know there are lots of other events running as well. There are a couple of collaborations also going on at the moment. One example is the Crazy Craft collaboration, which looks amazing, and that is being run by Louise Heinzel and Pam from Paper Outpost. So make sure you check that out. I think Tina is also taking part in that as well. So yeah, definitely get over and check that out. I know there is another collaboration that is going to be running through March that is going to be run by Anne on Instagram, and we took part in one of her collaborations last month, and she's doing another one next month. So I will bring you more details of that, because I did promise her I would let you all know it was going on. So if anything's coming up next month and I come across it, I will obviously put it in front of you in your way, because you guys just love a collaboration, don't you? I love a collaboration. I think it's amazing. I think it keeps things fresh, and it's good for us to get to know lots of other crafters as well. So I'm not going to hang on. I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your support, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, and we will be back with you very soon. Bye now.